Hello guys, I do hope and pray that you're fine wherever you are. Today I want to talk about education, and I want to talk about African education. Now first, I want to give a personal anecdote of what education means to me and what it means to many other Africans with the same experience as mine. Now, I grew up in a society that believed that education was the only way through out of poverty. I was fed up with the argument that education is the key to success. I was raised in a society that embraced education, a society that believed that attending primary education, high school, and university education or tertiary education was the only way to save the community and to save the country and to save self. In my time, university education was prestigious. A family with a child in university was seen as, let me say, as one of the top ranking families in society. And I grew up with this mindset, and I was streamlined. I was conditioned to believe that through university education I was already successful. As I talk to you today, I join many other African graduates. I join many other Kenyan graduates with a contrary view of the university education that I have just given you. Currently, Africa produces around 11 million graduates annually, that is every year, and only 3 million of these graduates are employed. That means only 3 million enter the job market. I see a problem in university education in Africa. I see a problem in the policies that governments make and enact to control university education. And I see a problem in how universities train graduates. Currently, as we speak, I have a strong negative view of university education. I am convinced to believe that the current university education is not the university education that we thought some 10 years ago. The current university education in Africa is just for the sake. At some point, I did say that to some point, I would discourage people from attending university education because the outcome, the end result, is not helping. You will go to university, finish your 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, and then at the end of it all, you remain jobless. The current joblessness in Africa is alarming. In fact, very many researchers, very many studies, very many agencies have established that the current unemployment rate in Africa, youths, 60% of youths in Africa are unemployed, and the majority of these unemployed youths are university graduates. A study by Inter-University Council for East Africa, which is one of the agencies in African Union, in 2014 found that at least half of East African university graduates are half-baked. Half-baked. When I talk about half-baked, it means that this population, they don't have employability skills. They don't have the required skills, the required knowledge to be employed. This same study found that at least 63% of Ugandans, at least 63% of Ugandan graduates are half-baked. 61% in Tanzania, 55% in Burundi, 52% in Rwanda, and 51% in Kenya. That is only East Africa. From this research, one of the problems I see in Africa's university education is the type of training that students receive in the institutions. I am worried because African universities train students in various sectors. These universities train engineers, they train teachers, they train doctors, they train pilots, and these graduates end up not working in Africa. They end up not getting jobs in Africa. Why? I have just answered that question. The kind of training that students receive in universities is not up to date, not relevant to the market requirements. I want to emphasize that African universities mostly focus on theory. Most African universities focus on theory, and if it is practical, these practicals are not up to the international or national standards. That is why you will see in Kenya, when Kenyans are building highways, they will contract the services of the Chinese. When Ugandans are building railways, they will contract the services of the Chinese. When South Africans are constructing an electric railway, they will contract the services of the Japanese or the Chinese. And if you are very keen, you will realize that almost all infrastructure projects in Africa are handled by the Chinese. Does this mean that Africa has no engineers? Does this mean that Africa has no surveyors? And does this mean that Africa does not offer quality training for its engineers? Why must the Chinese come to Africa to build railways? Why must the Chinese come to Africa to build roads? And why must the Chinese come to Africa to construct buildings? African universities do not offer the required practical skills, the required knowledge for its engineers, for its doctors. That is why you will see there are many graduates with degrees in medicine, but these graduates end up not working in African hospitals. When African presidents, when African leaders are sick, they will fly to the United Kingdom, they will fly to India, they will fly to Saudi Arabia, they will fly to the United States. Why? Because the type of education which is offered in African schools, African universities, does not match the market skills. African graduates do not have the employability skills. That is one of the problems with Africa's university education. the universities in Africa. Remember that Africa, we have very good universities. We have very good universities which are ranked globally. We have the University of Cape Town. We have the University of Pretoria, University of Cairo, University of Nairobi. These universities are offering quality training, but this quality training they offer are not up to the market. Up to that point, I want to encourage African governments and I want to encourage African universities to up the scale, the type of training that they offer to students. I prefer more practicals than theory, and I prefer less theory than practicals. I think that is the same thing. African universities should partner with the employers. For example, in Kenya, training to electricians, graduates specializing in electricity and electronics, they should partner with the Kenya Power and Lighting Company. The Kenya Power and Lighting Company will establish the framework, the training, the skills required to be employed. And I think in this way, the graduates will have the market required skills and their employability will be very high. I see a second problem in African education, and this problem goes with policy. I believe African governments do not have the relevant policies, relevant frameworks to offer employment to the youth. Remember that the youths are the majority unemployed in African countries. And remember that these youths are the majority educated in Africa. They are the most educated people in Africa, and they are the most unemployed in Africa. The problem lies with government policy. I think African governments must and should establish proper policies that govern the type of education offered in universities, the admission process in the universities. Today, I have a problem with admission process in universities. In my country, Kenya, today, you can join university after attaining only a C+. In my time, for you to join university, you were to gain at least B plane, that was 64 points and above. Today, you only need to get a C+, and then you are good to go to the universities. So I think the policies governing entry to the universities must be changed. Policies governing research in the universities must be changed, and policies governing employment in these sectors must be changed. I have given two options, two recommendations for African governments to change the scope of university education in Africa. One, I have emphasized the need for African universities to partner with employers. Partnering with employers means that these graduates, part of their training, let me say most of their training, should be handled by the employers. If a student is practicing to be an engineer, then road construction companies, engineering companies should be the ones conducting training, offering the skills, the required skills to be an engineer. If an individual is practicing to be an electrician, then electricity companies should be the ones handling the training for these students. The second option, I have given the governments to change policies. Policies must be changed at the university level, at the institutional level. Policies must be changed at the government level, and policies must be changed at the university entry level. And I think with these changes, with these developments, African university education will change for the better. Remember, the founding fathers emphasized the need for an effective education system, the need for African governments to support an effective education system which was accessible to all, quality education for all. Modern Pan-Africanists also emphasize the need for quality education. And I think university education is the highest tiers of education in Africa. Making university education effective is making the lives of African youths change. And I urge African governments, I urge African leaders to invest in quality education. And this investment should be done through policy changes. And this investment should be done by ensuring that graduates have employability skills. Those are my two options. And I think if these options are enacted in African universities, if African governments enact these two options, I believe the current unemployment rate in Africa will significantly reduce.